All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jared Sebesta. I'm going to be your host and moderator for this webinar that we are calling 5 Essentials of Building Wealth and Income. For those of you not familiar with our firm, we are Tejas Financial Group. We're based in Wilmer, Minnesota. We're an independent retirement planning firm where our goal is to help retirees and pre-retirees steward their time, their talent, and their treasure. We do that by building what we call purposeful retirement plans. If you want to learn more about us or learn more about our philosophy of time, talent, treasure, I challenge you to go to our website, tejasfinancial.com. Well, now I'd like to introduce our panelist here for today. This is Tim Mattern. He is a National Social Security Advisor from the National Social Security Association. He's been with us for nearly 8 years. He currently serves hundreds of families and individuals. Please welcome Tim Mattern. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Jared. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, like I said, you handle a lot of people and work with a lot of people and a lot of our clients. And, really at the end of the day, why don't you just explain to us and to people watching really what it is you're trying to do? This whole idea of building wealth and income, that really is kind of the foundation of what we try to do as a firm and what you try to do with your clients, right?
Yeah, for sure. So for us, it's trying to build wealth and eventually build that wealth into an income. And I think we get so confused in all these. I mean, you can read books for days and days and days, and I know you know this, but our goal is, I think the biggest question we get is, how do we retire? Well, before we can answer that, we got to start with, what do we need to do today? And that's part of building wealth and eventually building up that wealth to provide an income so that you can retire, or at least we can begin the conversation of retirement. So it starts today, whether you're 20 years old, 30 years old, or 50 years old. It's the things that you do every single day that really will determine what wealth you're building and how will retirement look for you.
Yeah. And like you just said it there, like this is for people, this webinar is for people of all ages. So whether you're approaching retirement or maybe just getting into the workforce, you're going to get a lot of value here. Talk about this for just a second, because there's a major shift that has to happen, because so much of your working years, building a business, building your 401k, it's all about building wealth. But talk about that mental shift that has to happen where you turn that wealth into income.
Honestly, it's a good point. It's probably the hardest component for our clients to really understand. I've had multiple clients sit me down and say, I don't think you understand how retiring is or how hard it is. And it's true, because we've been ingrained for 20, 30, 40, 50 years to try to save, and don't spend. And now you're at this point where, hey, we've built up these assets, so let's begin taking money out of our account. And by the way, I'm no longer working. That's a hard component to try to grasp. So I don't want to undermine how important and how valuable that is. And walking through those stages with our clients to say, how are we okay with turning on that income? And are we okay to see it? And there's many components with what you built up, 401k, Social Security, all these different avenues that we want to work with you on to help make that decision a little easier. I'm not going to say it's going to be easier, but a little bit more, appetizing for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're not going to get into that today, but that is certainly one thing that Tim focuses on, and we focus on as a firm, of really helping people through that psychology or that psychological step of turning off saving, turning on income, and that delicate balance.
Definitely,
because that's really what it is, right?
Yep, for sure.
100%. Well, let's get into what we're talking about here today. 5 essentials of building wealth and income. We're going to have 5 major points for you, and Tim's going to explain these in greater detail. Tim, you say the first one is income generation and growth. Let's talk about this for a second.
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is just fundamentally what we need to do. Like, there's 2 things that I see when building your wealth is, let's take care of expenses, which is probably the most important, and also income. And I think a lot of times people will try to problem solve and think and get way too analytical when it comes to their income growth and what they can do. And sometimes you just got to start making decisions. I think a lot of people, they don't let themselves go after that decision, go find that extra job. They want to try to make sure it's the perfect decision. And what they'll do is they'll almost freeze themselves. So now they have this cap or this ceiling on how much they can make, as opposed to what other options are there out there? What can I be doing to try to build up our income? Is there other opportunities out there? And I think It's just networking with people. It's making sure you're becoming the most valuable at what you do each and every day, so that you become more valuable. All of a sudden your salary can increase too. So for us, it's really looking at like what other ways or opportunities are out there for you to try to build income. And it doesn't have to be within those four walls. That can be your main income, but what else is there? And a lot of times I feel like the individual just gets stuck not making decisions. And sometimes you just have to act, make that decision, go try something. You might strike out, but it might be valuable in the long run to find ways to increase your overall income, whether it's between you or you and your spouse. So that way you can start hitting up some of these goals that you have for retirement.
I know we share the similar views on this. But talk about this for just a second, especially to people, maybe, younger than me. I'm in my 40s, but like, people just starting off in their 20s and their 30s, it's difficult to deal with perhaps the nature of the game right now, because life is so expensive. Housing prices are high. Inflation is high. Just the cost of living has changed so radically, just even in the last, 5 to 10 years. The old adage that we had where it's like, just work the one job, just do it this one way. There's nothing wrong with that, but speak to that person who maybe wants to take, I don't want to say more chances, but like understands that we live in a world where you can now make more money than what your parents could have done. And even for me, as I look back to what kids these days are making, those opportunities when I was in my 20s, certainly in my teens, they weren't there. So just talk about how we live in a little different world, and this should excite you that your income has the potential of reaching new levels that we really haven't seen before in human history almost.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're seeing it too. And I'm 38 and I don't even know of all the opportunities out there. It's the younger generation. I think I'm having conversations with clients that are younger, in their 30s and 40s, where we're trying to figure out, okay, what does retirement look like? And there's nothing wrong with a 401k pension built up over years and years. And does that work? Absolutely. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. What I'm seeing is there's more interest in, okay, I'm going to have that, and that's going to be the core of my retirement. But at the same time, what other pieces of passive income can I have? And again, no one knows, but it's putting yourself in position to see not only, number one, financially, that if someone does come to you, or if you have an opportunity to buy in or create income or invest in some sort of startup, like there's a lot of things out there that I think is fascinating. And I do feel like the new retirement is going to be, yes, I have my 401k, but I also have other income coming from other sources. What those can be: real estate, different ventures that you've got involved with. It doesn't have to be determined yet. But the biggest thing there is controlling your expenses today, so that when those opportunities come knocking, you can pounce on it, or you can say yes or no. It's not a definite no, I can't, because it's like, I have the liquidity and the ability to do it, but do I want to do it? Yes or no? But a lot of times people miss those opportunities because they're not financially prepared. And I think that's the biggest piece that a lot of younger generation are missing, is like, set yourself up to be successful.
Well, I think a lot of young people, at least the young people that I've seen, they know that they have to do something perhaps different than what my generation did or their parents' generation did, just because of how the world is changing, but also in a good way, where the opportunity is also out there as well, more than ever.
Yeah. And I'll even quick, and to speak on that, the expenses piece too, is like the opportunities will come, but I can't emphasize how important it is to have what your outflows under control. Mm-hmm. And it's not the $1,000 or the $3,000 expenses. It's the $100 one that happens 30 times a month that just drains you and you don't see it. It's the $50. And I think you and I have similar paths when we started with Dave Ramsey, just freeing ourselves up. And a lot of times you get caught up just, that's only $3 or $5. Those are the ones that hurt you. It's not always the $1,000 one. So I would just caution everybody, control your day-to-day behavior, and a lot of this will be solved for you.
I love that. We're talking about 5 essentials of building wealth and income. The first one is income generation and growth. The second one, Tim, saving and investing, not just saving and investing, but saving and investing wisely. Why'd you come up with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fundamental, and it doesn't have to be pretty. This is probably the most simplest thing ever. It's knowing where your income is, controlling your expenses, but then what do you do? The biggest thing I can do is, when you save, is automatically do it. just have it go every single month, whether it's $50 or $100. And I say this to every parent that has young kids that are 16, 17, make them open up a Roth and put $50 in there a month. And then for us, like if we can just continue to stick it in there, put in your 401k, have your Roth IRA, put it away so it's just automatically out of sight, out of mind. And it's just like a bill. And when it comes to specific investing, it doesn't have to be fancy. Full disclosure, what we do here is it's a lot of times it's just it's index funds and it's good quality mutual funds. We're not investing in stocks. We're not trying to find the new best thing. Like that's not what we do. 90% of what we do is behavioral. 10% is from math. So if we can come alongside our clients, help them make decisions that really are setting themselves up to build that wealth to retire, I think that's way more important than trying to find like the newest trend on this stock or this specific fund. It's very simple. Automatically set it in there, put it in the index fund, or a good mutual fund, and just keep it consistent. You don't have to overthink it. And like I said, our relationship here is not for us to try to find and get you wealthy quick, because that doesn't happen. It's long-term. Let us come beside you. Let us help you out. Let us, again, help figure out some of those behaviors and have better behaviors than it is to say, hey, we're going to make you rich overnight, because we don't believe that anyways.
Yeah. I saw a video recently that said something to the effect of, and I'm not sure what the context of it was, or certainly, their basis for this data, but they said investing long-term and building wealth had more to do with the act of just doing it rather than what it was being put in. I certainly don't want it to retract from the expertise and the knowledge of making smart retirement plans and investing plans. I don't want to take away from the work that you do and what we do. Yep. But the reality is, again, it's if you're not disciplined to do it regularly, it really doesn't matter what you're putting it in to, because you're not doing it on a consistent basis anyway. There's something you said about that.
And yeah, most of the time it's not a financial or math problem. A lot of people want to use that as a scapegoat. It's a behavior problem, Jared. And that's what I struggle with. And that's what I think people struggle to see, is it really isn't like numbers and X's and O's. I mean, yes, income has to be here, expenses have to be here. But at the end of the day, it's what you're doing in between that. It's the other 23 hours a day. Hopefully you're spending some time looking at your budget, looking at reconciling your checkbook, those types of things that if you just ignore it and you're not intentional about it, unfortunately, it's not going to, it more than likely won't. So it's not overcomplicating any of this at all.
Yeah, just do the basics really well, and the what will get figured out.
Yep.
All right, we're talking about 5 essentials of building wealth and income. Here's number 3, debt management. You talked about it a little bit already, but some of this is just really making sure that the loose ends are tied up at home, right?
Yeah, and it really won't. And I think that's the thing, is like saying this won't hurt. I think that's what a lot of people do when they go buy something, like, oh, it won't hurt that bad, or I can afford it. And those are the ones that just get you. So obviously, mortgage is one thing, but it's the credit card debt, it's the school loans that they become you're dragging a plow, and they just slow down the process so much more. And I just encourage anyone, like, get to it, and I can help you get on there's great tools out there. Dave Ramsey has his baby steps. There's plenty of people out there that have free software all over the place. But at the end of the day, nothing's going to make up for it than when you actually go physically do it. When you're running a budget, when you're listening to it. A lot of times for me, and maybe you can speak into this too, Jared, when I was trying to go through this in my 20s and clean up some of this debt, it was listening to a specific podcast every single day. Even though I knew the answers, what it did is it changed my behavior every single day. So when I drove by that fast food place, when I drove by those gas stations, I didn't need to go spend $8.75 a time. And I know that it's not cute and it's not exciting, but it's the reality. Get rid of those expenses and focus on things that are going to actually help you out in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would agree. And to echo your point, Tim, like you're really not hurting yourself in any way, shape, or form by cleaning up debt. Can you build wealth and income having debt? The truth is you can, but you certainly aren't hurting yourself by cleaning up some of this. Talk a little bit about this point with regards to point number 1, building income and wealth and increasing your income. In my mind, and I want to hear your opinion on this, like your more destructive consumer debts.
Mhm.
I just can't think of too many scenarios where that helps you. Using credit, debt in ways to build assets or invest in businesses falls perhaps in a different category. Where do you land on this one without getting you arrested by the Dave Ramsey
I was just
police?
gonna say this is in a good position. No, and I was thinking of this earlier, and I look at good rates versus bad rates and good debt versus bad. I think that we agree. Consumer debt is what we're mostly talking about.
Always
And
going to be bad. Yeah.
That's where 90% of people get caught up because they're in consumer debt. And next thing you know, they got a credit card bill that's 29% interest rate. It's just wild. And so when it comes to, hey, how can I leverage money to help build in the future? It's a whole different story. But again, do I want to do it today when rates are at 7, 8, 9, 10 versus 4 years ago? And I know we can't look back when it's 2, 3, 4. So if you are going to make a decision that's an asset or a potential business decision, like at least borrow money when it is less painful, so to speak. And I'm not agreeing that 2, 3, 4% should be the norm of interest rates. But I think we can look and say what's relative and utilize it. So I think as stuff turns around, again, don't spread yourself, don't spread your business thin. And like we talk about consumer debt, there's also business debt too. It doesn't mean you can just be buying stuff. But I agree. I think that leveraging money with relatively cheap interest rates can help move the needle when you're trying to build wealth, if it's a long-term goal. And I think that's the biggest thing is you need to identify, okay, is this a good business decision? Is it a good asset to have? Do I see a return on investment? All those things need to be well thought out so that you're just not out there borrowing now much bigger numbers that you're hoping pays off. Like you still have to do the due diligence and make sure it's the right decision, but it can be done the right way if you're leveraging money in the right way.
And I think it has to be, going out and borrowing money to build assets and business. That's probably not everybody should be doing that. So I think that there's a little bit of self-awareness that needs to go into that. There's a guy I follow on Instagram. His account is called the School of Hard Knocks. And he goes around and interviews all these people on the streets that are driving these luxury cars. And he starts asking these random questions like, how did you make your money? How can you afford a car like this? And they're always business owners or real estate people. Mm-hmm. And he'll ask them a very specific question. How did you get started? Did you need money to get in? And almost all of them, this is just me talking from a third party perspective, watching this, all of them said, you need to have financing. You've got to have great relationships with people who give you capital, with banks. Mm-hmm. But then again, too, the caveat is that not everybody's cut out for that game. So I think that there's, that you have to understand yourself, your personality. And you're certainly not suggesting everybody should go out there and start taking out debt to go build assets. But if that is in your nature, in your personality, that can be a way to build wealth and income.
Yeah,
to your point, but it's not for everybody.
Sorry, and ultimately, what do you want, right? So if you're going to go down that road, you're going to have added responsibility, added pressures, these different things that compile. And so when we're talking, when most 80% of Americans that's not going to necessarily drive to them, then let's scale it back and really figure out what do we need to hone in. And that's consumer spending. And that's everywhere, and I'm not going to go into this, but it is ironic that we talk about consumer spending, trying to slow it down, just like what our government's doing. We get upset that they're spending money, but we're doing the exact same thing. So let's be fair. And if we expect one side to spend less, then we all need to do the same thing and say, hey, it's okay to slow down. Don't need to keep up with the Joneses, that type of thing. Really control where your money's going, because you are in control of it. But once you start borrowing out, you lose control of it. Now the bank controls what happens to your money, and that's a bad spot to be in.
Yeah, I hear you. Point number 4, financial education and awareness. We've kind of touched on this already, but it deserves its own point here.
Yeah, for sure it does. And I think, we grew up in a Dave Ramsey world. And I think fundamentally, Dave has a lot of good things out there. So seek him out, listen to his podcast. Like I say, when I was going through this process, it helped me just keep motivated and keep learning and avoid going and making these bad expenses. So what I would say is you got to take time to do it. Be intentional first and foremost. It's not going to come by accident. You have to go out there. There's plenty of podcasts. There's plenty of social media accounts, and there's a lot of free information. I'll tell you this, it's not that much different from each other. One might spin it this way or that way. Even what we're talking about, it's nothing new under the sun. It's the fact of you're following your goal and your patterns, and you're being intentional with what you're doing, and it's taking action. I think that there's a ton out there, and if you guys have questions, more than happy to reach out and email and give you some people who I follow. But there's plenty of stuff out there, and I think it's just knowledge, and it's creating and expanding your knowledge base.
Yeah, and I would encourage people watching this and listening to this, read all the books, read them all, and get different perspectives on things. Like I've read all the books over the course of years, and a lot of them, they can all land on the same thing. Like I really can't find a single book out there or financial guru that's saying, hey, you should go rack up a bunch of credit card debt. A lot of them say they love debt, but again, to your point and to our point earlier, that was to build a business, and that's a very specific person dedicated to do that. That's not for the masses by any stretch of the imagination. But go out there and read the books and listen. There's no lack of information out there, that's for sure.
That is true. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. All right, our final point here, number 5, long-term planning and goal setting. Again, we touched on it already, but really, if you want to set yourself up, this is crucial.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say less about this. I think it's one thing that we all forget, and I'll say we as in my generation and younger, I think we're very much just kind of, let's make things happen. Let's not think long term. Let's just right now feels good. Let's make that purchase. And I think when you pull back and you have, again, after you learn and read and gain some knowledge, like you really need to say, okay, what do I want the future to look like? And I'm not going to be able to pencil out and say, how much do I need to retire today? They say have 25x of what you're trying to have. So if you need $60,000 of income, you should have 1.5 saved up. All those numbers are all fiat numbers to me, because it's 20, 30 years from now. So I think being intentional today and saying, okay, what do I want it to look like, and what can I afford now? Because the amount you put away today might vary, or likely will vary, or get, hopefully you're putting away or investing more later on in life as you free up your cash flow. So what you do today is just start with a fundamental number, start putting money into 401ks, start paying down debt, be very, very intentional with it. And then as you continue to, as your lifestyle changes, as debts free up and you get more cash flow, you get a raise, you're invested in here. Now you can start to hopefully meet with somebody and say, hey, here's a thought. I have a little bit of extra cash flow. What should we do? And it varies for everybody. Do you want to start investing for your lake home at 35 instead of 45? Like, do you want to do, again, it all varies, but I think putting out specific goals that you can measure with you or you and your spouse is so critical, because now you know what's out there. What does it take to get there? The answer is it's going to be different for everybody. And I think that a lot of times when I've listened to these, whether podcasts or read books, they help me fundamentally understand like the 80% rule. But I know that my situation is different than yours, Jared, and yours is different than the person next door. So I think really identifying what's your goal, and then sitting down with a professional or someone who knows this and say, hey, what does this, how can we achieve these goals? What kind of plan do we have to put into place? I think it's so critical to do. And the younger you start and the younger you begin this process, the more you'll appreciate that you did, because you're not waiting until you're 45 to start saying, okay, we should probably start thinking about what retirement or this venture might look like. Like, start young,
The world is just changing so fast that I can see how this webinar, or especially that last point, seems like so boomer, as the kids are saying nowadays. But I would challenge anybody thinking that, like, it's probably more crucial now in a changing world than one that appeared to be more stable, perhaps when our parents and grandparents were kind of in their wealth building years. What do you say to that?
Yeah, no, and I think that's what makes it more difficult to want to do it, because I do feel that younger generations view things differently. And I think maybe less stability and things like that, but I think we're all going through it too. And I have client meetings all the time, trust me, and you can go down rabbit holes and think this and that. And I got to pull back and say, here's the information. This is what I know today. I don't know what it's going to look like in 5 years or 30 years from now. So I think pulling back and really analyzing and say, okay, what do we know today? What does your situation look like today? And what decisions should we make today to again, plan for the future, I think is so important. Because you just don't know what the next few years will bring. So I understand the instability and the fear, and maybe some of those questions seems less, I guess, important a few years ago where they do now. But I don't think the equations change. I don't think the solution's any different. I think it's still just knowing what you know today and making smart decisions based on what you have. And I just, there's no secret magic answer to anything. It's just, how do we look at the situation and your, what's all in your parameters, and how can we best put together a plan that helps you achieve those goals for the future?
I like that. Here's your five essentials of building wealth and income, income generation and growth. Like, build it as much as you can, save and invest, build the saving muscle, pay off debt, and we're talking about consumer debt. Get educated, read the books, listen to the podcasts, get different people's perspectives, and then just old school long-term planning and goal setting. I want to put you on the spot here, but which one, if somebody needed to start, like, which one of the five would you say, like, focus on this one, even though they're all important?
Honestly, I think 3, your expenses, is just one you have to, like, get down and you have to figure it out. Thing is, they're all interconnected. And I'm guessing you noticed this, Jared, all 5 of these are not brand new ideas. I'm just throwing that out there. They've all been there before. But, like, okay, so number 4, financial education. You need the knowledge and education to do it, but you can sit there and read books for years, and until you actually take that one step, you're not going to get anywhere. You can have a PhD on how to save money, but unless you're actually doing something, it doesn't matter. So I think really controlling your expenses set yourself up and your family up to then make decisions that you guys want to do. If debt is there and you are financially in a crux, you're going to continue to operate underneath that. And once you have freedom, it makes your decisions a lot more clear, hopefully more simple. And I guess for me, it helps move to the next step, which is then, okay, now we can start building some wealth. Now we can invest in this, whether opportunity, or invest more in our 401k, which I've seen a lot of people do. Once I have clients in their 60s and they paid everything off, they start putting away 30, 35, 40% of their income into retirement. Why? Because they can, and they have the ability to do it. But if they still had all this debt, it would be a whole different story. So for me, I think it's getting number 3, debt management taken care of, really honing in on it, and making decisions for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Some great advice. I hope those of you watching from home have found some value out of this. As we land this plane, Tim, just talk about the next step. So people that maybe aren't working with a professional who needs some help in instituting some of these key points, whether they're 20 or 60, what's a good first step for them?
First, you can reach out to me or somebody who you know. The biggest thing for me is just find someone you trust and is an expert in this field. I think for many people, they delay it or they're too nervous about what they should be doing. It's just call somebody and let them come alongside you. My goal, if you were to talk to me, is not necessarily, hey, how can I charge or do these like crazy expenses. I just want to come alongside you guys. And most of the time we help with investing, but there's nothing unique or, that we have all these answers. Everywhere else in this community, in the state, and in this country has the same answers. What it is, though, is me coming alongside you, helping you bounce ideas off each other, figure out what works for you and your family, and then have some accountability. I think it's way more important. So we can, the investing piece is going to be there, but it's index funds, it's quality mutual funds like we discussed, and it's consistently just contributing. It's being active in it. But once we got that one lane figured out, you have all these other ones that you need to kind of sort through. That's where I think we come into play. Is like, how can we come alongside you, genuinely ask what kind of help do you want? How can we help you? And what solutions are there? I think that's the biggest thing. It's just some accountability too, for what you're doing.
I love that. If you want to contact Tim, his email is tim@tageousfinancial.com. Our phone number, 320-222-4236. And you can visit our website at tageousfinancial.com. Thanks for joining us on this webinar that we have titled 5 Essentials of Building Wealth and Income with Tim Mattern. We'll see you next time.